If you smell,
On this episode, join Andy and John as they discuss WrestleMania 36, Night 1. Welcome to the road home from wrestling.
Here in my car, I feel safest of all. I can lock on my doors. It's the only way to live in cars. Here in my car, I can only receive. I can listen to you.
All right, well, we're not headed home, but we are hanging out talking about WrestleMania 36. My name's Andy. I'm coming to you live to tape from the road home from wrestling, world headquarters of the world. And I got John hanging out at the satellite world headquarters of the world. What's up, John?
Not much, guys. I am really excited about talking about this show. It was so good.
You had a lot of fun watching it, huh?
I did. It took me a minute to get past the fact that there was no crowds, which we'll get to that. But once I got past no crowds, I was in.
I have a recommendation for folks, and this is how I usually watch WWE. When there is no crowd and all you have to hear is just Michael Cole yelling stupid shit the whole time and talking endlessly, just turn it down. Just turn it down and act like that's not even there. And it really makes a big difference as far as the enjoyment and the ability to watch more of it, if that makes any sense. Because one of the things that makes me exhausted watching WWE is when it just goes on and on and on and on and on, and you have them chewing your ear off the whole time. And if you can get a break from that, you can enjoy the wrestling a little more, in my opinion.
Yeah, so you were totally used to this style of the show then.
Yeah, a lot of times I watch it with the sound down, and I watch a lot of wrestling with the sound down sometimes just because I like to do other things while I'm watching wrestling too. But John, why are we not in the car, and why are we covering WrestleMania? Tell me what's going on here.
So basically the entire world has shut down, and WWE was gracious enough to kind of pre-record some wrestling so that the world in lockdown can enjoy some professional wrestling, because we're not really getting much of any of it in the meantime. And typically we go to a lot of different indie shows around the area, but we can't because we're stuck at home. So we figured, hey, there's actually some new content coming out. It might be mainstream WWE, but hey, at least it's something. So why don't we give people something to listen to? And it seems like a lot of people watch WWE, so this could be a good, thing to cover.
That's true. And one of the reasons that we don't usually cover WWE is because the gimmick of our show is we're the road home from wrestling. We go to shows, and then we review them on the road home from the show. And we can't go to the show because it was taped last week, and no one can go to the show, obviously. So we decided to kind of, do something different. And, way to create content and do something that we haven't done before. Now, you're probably going to hear some stuff out of my mouth anyway. I can definitely speak for myself. Some things out of my mouth that you don't normally hear. Maybe I might be a little more hypercritical, or I may be a little more critical of fans than I normally would be on the show. And that's because that's one of the reasons we don't cover WWE very often either, is because, sometimes we want our show to be positive. And sometimes there's not a lot of positive things to talk about with WWE. However, tonight I think we got a lot of positive things to talk about. John, what was your favorite part of the night?
I think my favorite part of the night, it's either a toss-up between the triple threat singles tag team ladder match, or the freaking boneyard match between AJ Styles and The Undertaker that none of us knew what to expect, and they freaking delivered on what we might have expected and what we never even imagined we wanted.
Yeah, something that was pretty interesting about tonight, and is that so the show started at 6 with a pre-show, which we're going to talk about all this in detail. But and then the main show started at 7. And what time did it end, John?
It ended at 10 o'clock. God bless the WWE.
Oh my God, there is a rule in show business, all right, and it is a very good rule, and there's a reason why it's a rule, and it's always leave them wanting more, and WWE never does that ever. They leave you exhausted typically, and thinking, God, I hope I don't have to watch this again anytime soon. And tonight they left me like right at the perfect amount where I was like, you know what, I could have seen another match after that. I would have been cool with that. But if we didn't, that's fine too. I feel great about it. We're gonna have this review up before midnight. I mean, that's good stuff.
Yeah, and exactly, like they left us wanting more, and luckily we get more because this is just night 1 of WrestleMania 36. We get a second night with another 8 to 9 matches to look forward to.
That's right, and we'll be right back here covering night 2 as well, and hopefully it ends at 10 p.m. as well. That would be awesome. So I don't know, but we'll see. But if the network was a little more user friendly, it used to have like you could see what was coming on when, and I don't know if you can even do that anymore because I can't work it very well. You could see how long pay-per-views were scheduled to be, and I think it'd be pretty easy to figure that out at this point because they taped everything. But John, where do you want to start? I mean, obviously we got to start with the pre-show, but do you want to kind of talk a little bit about the atmosphere and what WWE did differently on this show than what they do normal shows?
So, like, just like how they set things up, or what you mean?
Yes, set the show up for us,
Okay, so originally WrestleMania 36 was supposed to take place in Tampa Bay, Florida. Or is it Tampa, Florida? I don't know. Isn't it the same thing? But because of the coronavirus, it was moved to Orlando, Florida, to their Performance Center, which is a much different atmosphere than the giant Tampa Bay Buccaneers stadium that can hold, thousands upon thousands of people. This one can now hold, due to the virus, it can hold about 20 people in one open room.
Right.
And so we don't get the typical pre-show announce group that we get, which is usually like 4 people. They do a little panel, they go over matches, they analyze them. Instead, we got Corey Graves and that other guy,
Sweet Peter Rosenberg. That's who it is, right?
You get Corey Graves and Peter Rosenberg in some remote studio that has the same graphics that I believe they used in the porn parody of Pirates of the Caribbean, Pirates.
Okay.
Because it's the same, like, it's like low budget graphics. I'm like, WWE, y'all got a lot of money. Why are these graphics not better?
Well, I heard that Pirates movie, I mean, I don't know much about it, but I heard that Pirates movie was the most expensive porno ever made. So are you saying that, the great people at Vivid Entertainment didn't put very much money or effort into that movie?
For a guy who claims he doesn't know much about that movie, but knows the studio that it's from, yeah, I mean, I think they put a good amount of money in it, but typically they probably use the same room and they just wash the sheets. This time they had do a little more. But it looked like the same quality production values, and I'm like, WWE, you got a lot of money, step it up a little bit.
They're on the holodeck, so they're hanging out on the holodeck on the Starship Enterprise. I wish we could all go there, which my buddy has a podcast called Shut Up Wesley, and it's a Star Trek Next Generation podcast, and they always talk about that poor bastard who has to clean up the holodeck, like after people jizz in it, basically, so it's pretty gross. But anyway,
Yeah.
So Corey Graves, Peter Rosenberg hanging out, jizzing in the holodeck, and what do these guys do besides argue and argue? What else did they do, John?
They kind of went over the card. They announced what matches were going to be happening on night 1, while, like you said, arguing about what was actually going to happen and who's the better of the good guys and the bad guys. It was very annoying. And luckily, we didn't have to stick with them for too long because they sent us to our first match of the night.
The only thing I want to mention is we did get a brief look, well, actually not a brief look, the entire thing of a music video by Miz and Morrison that was pretty much just the Miz doing a John Cena impersonation. I mean, he even did the face that John Cena makes when he's doing the comeback rap. You know how he kind of curls his lip a little bit and he's like, yeah. That's and kind of what Marky Mark does. They're all ripping each other off, but yeah, I was not happy after I listened to that, and then and then those guys argued about it, and I was like, man, this is not setting up this night well. I was hoping they'd get me pumped for stuff, but they didn't, which makes me kind of never want to watch the pre-show ever again, other than the matches, which is what I normally do. So we'll see how tomorrow goes. But anyway, so what was the first match, John?
The first match was also our pre-show. Would you like to do the honors, or you want me?
Well,
to?
it's not though. This is a
That's
No, this is our mid pre-show match. And what was the match?
It was Drew Gulak versus Cesaro.
Yeah. Now these guys are fighting because, you know, a lot of this stuff was last minute, and some of the storyline shit doesn't make any sense, and that's okay. You know, that's just the way it is when half the roster can't perform. That's another thing we didn't mention, is that half the roster can't perform because they either didn't want to or because they couldn't, you know, because of the coronavirus, which I didn't mention to say right up top that it is absolutely completely irresponsible of WWE to put the show on. However, I'm glad they did, because we haven't had any new wrestling in quite some time, and I saw a lot of people bitching on Twitter about all kinds of stuff, and I'm just like thinking to myself, man, how are you guys bitching about anything? Because we haven't had anything at all. And now we get this, which is something all these guys busted their asses tonight. And that was one of the themes of the night. So go ahead, John. I'm sorry.
Oh, you're good. So just a quick rundown of the match. Gulak initially tries to focus on Cesaro's left arm pretty much the entire match. He tries for like a Gulak lock, some arm drags, throws Cesaro into the ring steps a few times, straight on the arm that he's been working over. But Cesaro shows a lot of pure strength. At one point, he picks up Gulak from the mat and does a gut wrench like power slam to him. There was another spot where Gulak was jumping out like at him out of nowhere, and Cesaro just catches him and slams him down. There were multiple like really aggressive European uppercuts. And then we kind of get to the finish because it's the pre-show, so the matches aren't super long. But Cesaro goes for the neutralizer, but because his arm is so shot from Gulak working it over, that he picks up Gulak for a UFO airplane spin where he uses no arms and then slams him down to the mat and is able to pick up the victory.
Now, years ago, when Cesaro was on the Indies, interesting note, too, by the way, we just had Mike Quackenbush on a couple days ago, and he was the trainer for Drew Gulak and Cesaro, so that's pretty cool. And if you've never seen Mike Quackenbush versus Cesaro from the Indies, good Lord, that is some good shit. But anyway, that airplane UFO spin is something that he would always do on the Indies, and he did it like once or twice in NXT, and then they were like, oh, that's too fancy. You can't do that shit anymore, so which is, what always happens. Everybody's move set becomes the same moves when you go to WWE for the most part. So he couldn't do that anymore. So that's the first time he's busted that out in quite some time that I'm aware of. Have you ever seen him do that before, John?
I have not. And the only other person I've really seen doing it here lately is Thomas Shire on the Indies.
Oh my God.
Which
Shire,
he all on Twitter. Shire was pissed. He's like,
yeah,
he's
done now. He can't do it anymore because no offense,
he's doing it with no arms. I can't top that.
Right. That's insane. So that move's incredible. This match was really good. However, like you said, this was us kind of coming to grips with how this was going to work. And one of the things that was interesting is they taped all this stuff at different times. So commentators would change with no warning. And you didn't see him like come in and out and stuff like that, which was fine because I wasn't really listening to him anyway for the most part. And, but it was just kind of weird. It reminded me of like I don't know, one of those, like a Superstars show. That's kind of what it reminded me of, the later versions of Superstars, where it's just like these matches that are taped before the show, and commentators just kind of change and stuff, and you don't really even notice. How did you feel about the feeling of this match as far as that goes?
I think it was a good way to kind of ease us in because this was more of a like technical match where they were doing a lot more grappling and submission moves, and so it made you very like cognizant of the fact that there was no crowd, and it kind of like got you on board with like there's no crowd, so we're gonna have to listen to the wrestlers like grunt and hit each other. And I think who shined the most like out of this entire night probably were the referees, because now you can hear the referees kind of like telling them like, hey, you can't do that. Hey, you need to back up. And you don't typically get to hear that on the live TV shows because the crowd's so loud. And so I thought that was a really nice touch now that we might not have a crowd to listen to, but we can now hear the referees kind of like making sure to call it down the middle, which I
Yeah. I mean, if I could do a brief impression of the refs tonight, it'd be something like, all right, Drew, get him out of the corner. Get him out of the corner. You guys have 2 minutes. Get him out of the corner, okay? We're going to need to get him out of the corner. 2 minutes left. 2 minutes left. So, that's kind of my impersonation of them. But I noticed something interesting about this show. I couldn't hear the fucking ring, which bugged me, because we're trying to get noise. The noise is a very important part. We've talked about that quite a bit on this podcast about how, sound is a big part of wrestling. And, the fact that I couldn't hear the ring alerted me to the fact that they didn't have it mic'd up the same way that they normally would, or they had that mic turned way down so that we didn't hear, you got 2 minutes left, 2 minutes left, that kind of thing as often, which was nice. So I can't wait to see the Botchamania, though, because he always cranks the volume so you can hear everything. That's going to be great. But who won again, John? I'm sorry.
Cesaro.
Cesaro gets the win. Yeah, awesome. All right, so after that, we had a bunch more talky talk, and then, John, we were excited. You and I were texting back and forth like, oh, my God, what is the pre-show main event going to be? You thought it was going to be a women's match. Other people on Twitter thought it was going to be this, that, and the other thing. And, John, what was it?
It was more promos.
That's right. The pre-show main event was a fucking promo.
But at one point, before we got to the pre-show main event, they did throw it over to Renee Young, Booker T, and Mark Henry, who were covering the Raw Women's title match. And this was much more what I anticipated the pre-show like commentary to be, because it was those three kind of talking about the match and who they thought had the leg up, whereas Corey and Peter just like bickered back and forth. But like Renee, Booker, and Mark gave us like actual analytics to a match. And so I would have much rather had that the entire pre-show, but
I kind of hate all that, because the other thing that happens when those guys are live on those panels, they sometimes bicker even more than, especially Booker. Booker is like a guy who will get picked on and he gets angry, and then it kind of changes his reactions to everything for the rest of the interview segment. And that's okay. So that is kind of fun. That's one of my fave fives. So anyway, but yeah, so that was the pre-show main event. It was basically a commercial that said, hey, buy this pay-per-view, which I'm always blown away by, because I'm thinking to myself, okay, so we're already watching it. Who are you trying to sell the pay-per-view to? Like, right. It's people that are already watching it. It's like when you go into a restaurant and they have signs hanging all over for the food that they have there advertising it. They have placemats. They have little signs on the table, and you're like, motherfucker, I'm already here. I'm buying shit. Why are you advertising to me? But it's what it is, right?
Yeah. I think it's because sometimes they give it for free on like Facebook and YouTube. You can watch the pre-show for free. So maybe that's the audience trying to get in. But at this point, like, how do you not know about the WWE Network? They've literally been hammering it into our heads for the past like 4 or 5 years. And so when I see people online who are like, oh, how can I watch the show? How do you not know how to watch the show, you idiot? You're on the WWE page.
Do you remember the $9.99 thing? Oh my God, remember that? Jesus. Yeah. They just
instead of going to the movies, you can have your whole family watch a wrestling show.
Right.
Yeah.
I just remember it was even to the point where people would make a joke, like Mick Foley would come on and he'd say like, and there's this network that's coming out for an undisclosed sum, and the crowd would start chanting 9.99 at him and stuff. Oh my God, insanity. So, and you're gonna get some meandering from us tonight because we don't have a time limit. We're not in the car. We're not like trying to. We don't have a time limit tonight, so we'll take as long as we want. So here we are.
And we don't get to talk about WWE very often.
Yeah,
That's like the main show everybody watches, including us a lot of times. So you get to hear like us talk about some of our favorite guys that we never get to talk about.
Well, and if you're just joining us, I would say that I am more of the, pretty much purely indie wrestling fan, and you are also an indie wrestling fan, but you watch a lot more WWE than I do, especially recently. You've watched it pretty heavy, most of your life, and I've had giant breaks, including right now. So, except for WrestleMania, of course. So, anyway, all right. So we're moving on to the main show, and pretty much nothing changes. I mean, we didn't talk about the arena either, about the setup. I was very disappointed that they did absolutely nothing to make this look like something special. And I have a feeling that's because they thought they had more time than they did. I think that's a big theme tonight, just the way the show felt, the way it was put together. The wrestlers stepped up. But the people in charge, I think, thought they had a little more time to do this. Does that make sense?
Yeah, they thought that, this wasn't really going to affect them. And they're like, oh, well, we can probably, get away with this. And then here we are. You can't get away with, just kind of slacking off at this point.
Yeah, because they basically taped all these. And the way that they got away with doing this is that they would bring in different groups of people, it seemed like. So they had different announcers for a certain set of matches, and then those guys would come out one at a time, basically, and do their matches. And then, they would change announcers and tape a group that way, but they were all kind of mixed together. So, and we also saw some hilarious edits that we will talk about during the show as well, where they clearly edited the match to, take a part out or add a part in or redo a part. So we'll talk about that too. But John set us up for this first match. Tell me all about WrestleMania Night 1's first match.
Well, before we get to the first match, we get a opening segment of Stephanie McMahon in another undisclosed sound studio, where she kind of just goes and tells everybody like, "Hey, it's our job, and we feel very we feel like it's very necessary right now to provide you guys with some kind of different entertainment, since there's not much coming out right now, and our biggest goal is just to provide you an escape during these tough times." And she does this all without saying the C word, because you are not allowed to say COVID-19 or coronavirus in WWE, because those are two bad words.
I thought you meant cunt.
No, I meant coronavirus.
Oh, okay, I gotcha. What do you think of Stephanie McMahon?
I think that she is like one of the biggest heels in professional wrestling. I think she does a good job at it.
I think she's money on the mic, and everything else she does doesn't matter. I'm sure she's a terrible person, like all the commands and and all that kind of stuff. But I think she's fucking money on the mic, and she was the perfect person to do this. Because I was wondering this whole time, why hasn't Vince McMahon come out and acknowledged that this is going to be different? The whole pre-show, they never even acknowledged it, and so I was shocked that they didn't do that. And then when they opened up the show with this segment, I was like, okay, all right, thank you for acknowledging that things are different. That was nice. So what happened?
Yeah. And so after that, we got a supercut of America the Beautiful with a handful of past performers, which I kind of called this as soon as they started going into it. I was like, if they are doing a supercut, Andy, you might have to do the show by yourself, because I'm going to have to retire, because this is too good a work by their part. And then they did it. And I tried to retire, but you wouldn't let me.
Well, I was confused, because usually when you say something like that, you would mean because it's bad and you don't want to watch the rest of the show. So you were like, yeah, I'm retiring. And I'm like, okay, whatever, John. I don't get it. But I don't know. I mean, who can know, the whims of John? No one, right?
No one but me. And even me not all the time.
Right.
From America the Beautiful, then we go to what WWE is probably I dare say it's probably the best out of any company, any like video production. They do this amazing like promo kind of highlighting all the wrestlers while getting you hyped for the show while also doing like a almost like a Hollywood movie where there's action and there's comedy, but there's also like heartfelt moments. Like, would you say that WWE is like one of the best at making these video packages?
They're the best. There's no doubt about it. And, this was a vignette, you would call that, with all, basically they would introduce, you would hear voiceover of one of the wrestlers talking like, this is the biggest match of my life or whatever they were saying. And then they'd show them in like a cool way. Like, for example, Kofi Kingston was dressed up like Kratos from God of War, and he's got like a squid behind him and he's got this axe in his hand. It's fucking cool as hell. I really, they're so good at that shit. But one thing it did make me chuckle is that this was going to be like a pirate themed WrestleMania, because in Tampa Bay, the Buccaneers are the team, and the place they were going to have it has a giant fucking pirate ship at the end in one of the end zones, and it's like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers stadium is so cool because it has that. That's so awesome. And they had all these graphics made, they had all these videos made, and they're like, well, we're still going to use them. Like, so everything was still pirate themed, right?
Yeah, we blew all of our wad on that pirate themed video, and we are going to use it.
That's fair.
Whether we're at a pirate ship or not.
That's right. Yeah. Well, what was the first match, John?
The first match was the women's tag team title match, pitting Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross against the Kabuki Warriors, Kairi Sane and Asuka.
So the Kabuki Warriors have had like kind of a rough go of it ever since they won those titles, I think off of Sasha and Bayley, if I remember correctly.
No, they beat Billie Kay and Peyton Royce, the Iconics.
The Iconics had the titles?
Yeah, they beat Sasha and Bayley for them, and then they literally did not defend them.
And after they lost to the Kabuki Warriors, they said, "See you later, wrestling," and we haven't seen them since. So, although I have seen Peyton Royce on Instagram, so
yeah,
kind of hard.
Follow.
What's that?
I said give them a follow. They're real cute.
Yeah, they're hilarious too, and it's a shame because I really like them. Anyway, Kabuki Warriors have had a rough go of it though, because they've had injury issues and all this other bullshit that's going on that have kind of kept them from defending these titles. Is this the first time they defended them?
No, I think they've defended them like randomly here and there. I guess maybe against local talent, but they've defended them. I just literally cannot tell you who or when they last defended them. Oh, they defended them against Becky Lynch and Charlotte in a TLC match at TLC back in December. So they have not had a title defense since December, 4 months ago.
I watched that, and I have no memory of that. Huh.
That's where Kairi Sane got injured.
Oh, right. Okay. And Charlotte was like, "I don't care. I'm going to powerbomb your ass." I remember.
Yeah.
Charlotte doesn't give a fuck in that match. Poor Becky Lynch had to defend her opponent against her partner from her partner. So anyway, so they've had a lot of issues. Finally, they get to defend it, and I feel like that this was all just leading up to the straps being taken off of them, right? I mean, that was kind of like, we got to get this belts off of these two so that they can do other stuff. Obviously, though, one thing about all the results tonight and everything that happens tonight is no one knows what's going to happen. No one knows when wrestling is going to return. No one knows whether any of these storylines are going to go anywhere, because we don't know what tomorrow brings in this world. So, it's just one of those things where some of the results don't make sense. Some of them do make sense. But at the same time, they have to figure out what they're going to do, and they don't know, and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, so what did you think of this match, John?
I thought it was good for what it was. It wasn't like spectacular wrestling, but it was fine. It got the job done as the opening match, I thought. What about you?
I thought that ladder match should have been the opening match for sure. That's just my opinion, because I think that would have started the night off hot. But the reason this was another way to kind of ease us into the atmosphere, because this match felt weird. Definitely, it just felt off, and you had Nikki on the apron sometimes clapping her hands and stuff like that, and it's like, well, there's no one here, and she wasn't doing it sarcastically, she was doing it like genuinely, and it's like, well, okay.
Did anyone tell her there's no one in the crowd?
I think someone told the wrestlers don't change anything. That's what I think. I think the agents and everybody said, listen, don't change anything. Keep doing what you're doing. And, that's something else I kind of want to talk about a little later, too, as far as, like, what's next for wrestling, But anyway, all right, so tell me about this match, John.
All right, so Kairi Sane and Alexa Bliss start things off, and they both are mocking each other, kind of like playing with each other's hair and bow ties, until Bliss eventually takes control. At one point, she hits a baseball slide to Zane and sends her like toppling off the ring apron to the ground pretty hard. And there's a lot of fast tags between the Kabuki Warriors, and then there's a pretty nice sequence where Asuka kicks Cross in the gut really hard, and then Zane hits like a bicycle kick to the back of her spine. Nice. And then Asuka hits a bulldog, and then Zane bounces off the ropes and hits another, like a drop kick to Cross's face. I thought it was a really pretty sequence that they did. And a lot of the match, Kairi, I think her as a bad guy, I think is much better than her as a good guy, because she was so annoying in this match. And the fact that she kept like getting under Alexa Bliss's skin by just like constantly making fun of her and pulling at her hair, and I thought it was very good heel tactics that you don't typically see from some heels.
At one point, they were both on the outside just screaming in Japanese at no one. That's awesome. I love it. I really like that, and I'm glad that this is another one of those things where in WWE they put all these handcuffs on you, they got the shackles on you, and as soon as they take those off a little bit, oh my gosh, a little bit of your personality starts to come out, and all of a sudden we're interested a little bit. And those two wrestlers in particular are some of the most talented female wrestlers to ever live. So the fact that they've not been able to kind of show that in WWE is a shame, But at the same time, Asuka's had a good run at times. Her run in NXT was legendary, and that's kind of how that goes, though, right? So.
Yeah, her main roster not as much, but her NXT run worth the while. So back in the action, Nikki Cross gets a hot tag. She comes in, hits a running bulldog, and then a crossbody on Kairi Sane. And Asuka is able to do a blind tag, which Nikki doesn't see. And so she hits a crossroads on, I believe it was Asuka, and had her pinned. But Kairi Sane comes off the top rope for an insane elbow, which this is where the edit happens, because Nikki has Asuka pinned, and you can clearly hear the refs like 1, 2, and he hits 3, but then they do a quick edit of like him coming down for the 3 and Kairi hitting the elbow, and so you're clearly like, well, Nikki just won the match, but we edited it so it doesn't look like it.
There was many times that happened tonight where I wasn't sure if the network was fucking up or if there was some kind of edit. Now, that one was pretty obvious it was an edit. And then they posted a highlight of it later on Twitter, and I was like, oh, my God, it's like blatant. It's so obvious. I mean, even a little kid would be like, there's something wrong here, So I just thought that was kind of weird. And there's a couple of parts tonight, like I said, where you get these edits that are just obvious, and they're just kind of like, come on, guys, at least try to hide it a little bit, But it's the amount of production that went into that part of it versus the amount of time that they had doesn't seem to match up. But again, maybe they thought they were going to have more time, so that's that too. But anyway, John, well, I mean, are we running towards the end of this one here, or what happened?
Yeah, we're not too far from the end. So after that sequence of finishers, then we had Asuka put the Asuka lock on Nikki, and then Bliss went to the top and hit a twisted Bliss to break up the submission. And I thought it was really neat how they kind of did that sequence right there, where they had the one set doing their finishers, and then they switched over to the other set of wrestlers doing their finishers. I thought it was a really creative spot.
Mirror spots. I love that shit.
Yeah. And so after that, Asuka puts Nikki on her shoulders. Zayn goes for a flying elbow into a power bomb, but it's only good for 2. Asuka runs into the ring post. Nikki is able to hit a crossroads on Kairi Sane. She tags out. Bliss comes in, hits a twisted Bliss, and gets the pinfall. And we have our first new champions of the night, Nikki Cross and Alexa Bliss, the new women's tag team champions.
And they celebrate and cry and everything. And just a couple quick notes from that match that I have is one, I think that you're thinking of a swinging neck breaker, not a crossroads, but I could be wrong. And then
yeah, I think it was a swinging neck breaker. But
that's one. It's just, I know that's one of her signature moves, so I'm thinking that's what you're thinking of. But the other thing, too, is you failed to mention that at one point in this match, Alexa Bliss did a somersault senton from the apron to the floor and like landed hard and got right back up. And I was like, all right, that's how you get over right there. I fucking love that, you know? So, because the rib on her, the thing that everybody hates about her is she doesn't do wrestling moves. You know, and so seeing her do stuff like that and some of the wrestling moves she did tonight, I thought she did pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, she has a gymnastics background, so, and like a cheerleading background, so she comes in handy with being able to do these really cool offensive moves. So
she had posted that her outfit was themed, but no one could guess what the theme was. And I really wanted to post this, but I didn't want to sound like a creep. But I was going to post like wrestling fanboy dream girl. Is that what the theme is? Because pretty sure that's what it is. But anyway, so that was a great match. I don't know if I call it great. I thought it was good. But again, this night was a big crescendo where they were kind of easing us in and then getting us up. And then we had a couple, everything kind of, all the really awesome shit kind of happened at the end. So anyway, well, what was next, John?
After that, Sami Zayn cut a promo backstage where he said that he's got a couple tricks up his sleeve tonight with Shinsuke Nakamura and Cesaro, and that he plans on walking into WrestleMania and out of WrestleMania as the champion like few men have done before.
So Sami Zayn is part of this kind of group where he's the leader. He's he won the IC title in a triple threat or something. It was like a tag match or something.
It was a 3-on-1 handicap match. It was him, Shinsuke, and Cesaro versus Braun Strowman. And whoever got the pinfall was the new champion.
And that storyline was headed to WrestleMania, but because Roman Reigns couldn't wrestle on this show, then Braun Strowman had to get pulled out of that or whatever. And there's a lot of sliding around of all the people and everything. They did a really good job plugging all the holes. They really did. And that's why, WWE has one of the best wrestling rosters in the world. So they can kind of just, we also have this other awesome guy that can slide in there. So, Daniel Bryan is kind of paired up with Drew Gulak. I don't know if you noticed this, but when they came out, they were doing calisthenics and they were doing this kind of thing, this like Japanese young boys are the only people I've ever seen do this, really, or the Japanese grandpas, as they're called, or the dads. They like Yuji Nagata and Nakanishi, they come out and they face each other and they do this kind of like exercise where they kind of link arms different ways, and it's kind of an interesting looking thing. So they were doing that, and that popped me huge. I was like, awesome, Yuji Nagata somewhere is smiling. So that was pretty cool.
You would love all the stuff they've been doing, because they've been doing a lot of even on social media, different training sequences where Gulak is supposed to be training Daniel Bryan to be this superb wrestler right now. And so it's just part of the training. That is.
Well, I have been seeing a little bit of that, and it's been a lot of fun. And Daniel Bryan, everybody knows that's my favorite wrestler. So, seeing him tonight wrestle at WrestleMania after years of him not even being around, I'm just thankful to see him wrestle. And so tell me about this match, John. What happened?
Well, we are not at that match quite yet.
God damn it!
We got a few in between. Next up, we had King Corbin versus Elias, which was not a match I was looking forward to, but it ended up not being too bad. So initially, what were we gonna say?
I was just gonna say this was the point of the night where I kind of snapped into the show. Where I was like, okay, all right, so I'm starting to get into this a little bit. But go ahead, John. I'm sorry.
So Corbin initially comes out and he demands that the referee just raise his hand because Elias is supposed to be dead because he pushed him off of a balcony a few weeks ago on SmackDown. And so rightfully so, Elias should be dead. But it's WWE and he is not. And so we hear Elias strum the few chords that he knows on the guitar as he walks down the aisle and says, "Surprise, I'm not dead, I'm here." It was very like soap opera-esque. And so Corbin runs out and tries to, obviously attack Elias from the outside, but Elias, ducks down and then hits him with the guitar while the referee, like, I didn't know it was the referee at first. I just kept hearing like a woman yelling, like, "Get in the ring! Stop doing it! What are you doing?" And then they finally get in the ring and I realize, oh, it's the referee. It's the, like, one female referee that WWE has right now, which it's great. I think it's awesome that they finally have a female referee, especially on the main roster. And I think this was her debut match at WrestleMania, and so she was living it up. Her name is Jessica Carr, and honestly, she stole this match for me. Like, I couldn't pay attention to the wrestling because I was just paying attention to her repping the shit out of this match.
She was getting her shit in, man. For sure. It was great. Both these guys are huge dudes who aren't necessarily known as very good wrestlers, and also are known for being overexposed and being like toys that Vince McMahon has kind of thrown away a little bit. Guys that got pushed really hard, were on so many segments. I mean, it's unbelievable. And check this out. So I used to go to NXT shows all the time when they would travel, and they don't do that as much anymore. They only kind of come around every once in a while, but they used to come around here all the time. And one time I drove all the way down to Florida, and I went to a taping at the university, is it Florida University or something like that?
Full Sail University.
No. This was actually
it was the other random.
Yeah, this was at a different arena, like Central Florida University, I think is what it was.
Okay.
Yeah, University of Central Florida. Sorry, that's what it is. Anyway, point is, I went there and I saw a taping, and this was the debut of Austin Aries. This was also the debut of Elias. And Elias, since they taped 4 episodes at once, Elias came out 4 times. So I saw a lot of Elias right away, and that was also the episode where Austin Aries comes out and Baron Corbin attacks him, and they have their little feud and everything. And, it's just fun to see those guys all the way back then. And that's not even the first time I saw those guys. I saw them before that, except for Elias. So, it's just fun to see these guys now be on WrestleMania wrestling each other. Pretty cool,
Yeah, I would agree. I've been down. I went to an NXT taping. It wasn't a taping. It was a house show. So it was even more like
nice.
Weird. And a lot of those people, I think Charlotte and Sasha were on that show, and Bailey. So it's been really cool to see them go from working these crowds of 55 to 100 people, because WWE still has those kind of shows that they're running with NXT, believe it or not. And to see them now go to being on the main roster and doing these spectacular matches at WrestleMania and just weekly is really fun to see.
Yeah, they've been running a little loop in Florida at 3 or 4 different venues, and they've been doing that for years, even since the Florida Championship Wrestling days, I think. So, that little loop stayed in Florida for quite a while, and then the first show that they ever did outside of Florida, I believe, was in Columbus. And so, I went to the second one that they came out of the state for, which was also in Columbus. And, man, it's been fun to see that stuff. And I wish that they came back more, and I wish NXT was still a smaller thing like it was. But, now.
Well, so even when they're running those bigger shows, they're still doing the smaller ones down there with the lesser known NXT roster members.
That's a long drive,
Let's just move to Florida and we can start doing the show from down there.
Let's wait till all this is over and then we'll move to Florida. But yeah, well, one of these days, John, you got to look up the card from that show that you went to, and we'll look at it, because I'd be very interested to see some of the matches you saw. Because, I've seen some crazy ones too, but I love that shit. That's awesome. So, all right, tell me about this big guy versus big guy match, and what happened before the bell even rang.
So before the bell rang, they just kind of scuffled on the outside. Elias hit Corbin with the guitar,
Boom!
and the referee was pissed about all the pre-match shenanigans. They eventually listened to her. They got in the ring. The match started, and Elias kind of maintained control. Standard fare, both of them getting the leg up, but eventually Corbin was able to gain control and works over Elias's shoulder that he injured from the fall, not like his back or neck, just his left shoulder. You know, it took all of the punishment.
Mhm.
He starts barking at the commentary team and the referee to try and get them on his side. And the commentators are like, hey, JB, I was like, hey, I have been putting you over, bro. Like, leave me alone. Michael Cole's the one that's not. And the referee's like, get the hell out of my face. I'm going to call the match down the middle, not because you want me on your side.
Yeah. That's
Um,
right.
And then Elias is able to work over Corbin in the corner, rips his shirt off like he's Hulk Hogan. Corbin tries to do his spot where he like slides to the outside, runs around the ring post, and then comes back in. And this is the second time he's done it. The first time he was successful. The second time, Elias was onto his game and he didn't fall for it. And he hits a jumping knee strike to the face for a 2 count. Corbin's able to recover a little bit, hits a deep 6, and puts his feet on the ropes. But the referee, she's not here for that.
Oh, she
sees
busted
it.
his ass, and she's like yelling at him, "You can't do that!" And I love when heels get caught, and they go, "What? What do you mean?"
What was I doing? I wasn't doing anything. I was just resting my feet. I need to help my circulation.
That's great.
So she calls him on his shit. And during the distraction, Elias is able to roll up Baron, pulls the tights that the referee doesn't see this time, and he gets the victory. So Elias picks up his first WrestleMania victory. I think it's his first match, actually, because last year he was just playing a guitar and got beat up by John Cena.
That's right. Oh, that was
But I
awesome.
think this year was like his first match officially.
Yeah, that sounds right. Yeah, I fucking love this match. I thought it was awesome. Um, Elias was bumping like a fucking maniac, and Baron Corbin was doing his shit, and the pace was great. They didn't, this is something I wanted to mention a little later, but let's just really quick go into this, is that something has to change with pro wrestling, all right? Because if they're going to continue to have these like no fan matches, all of the times that the crowd's being built up and brought down and all that kind of stuff, that's all time for the wrestlers to build the story and to rest. And if you don't have space for that, or if you don't have the crowd to cover that time, then what do? I saw this awesome video by Renegade Cut today where he kind of compared it to a show with a laugh track, like a sitcom with a laugh track, and then he played the sitcom without the laugh track. Well, shit wasn't funny anymore, was it? And so it's a kind of thing where those spaces where the crowd would be laughing on a show like that is where the breathing happens, and so I'm just interested to see whose style is going to relate best to this kind of thing, and is someone going to invent an amazing style where they figure out how to work a match with no crowd. And these guys did a pretty good job by not stopping, by continuing to go. Like, there wasn't a lot of resting, and when they did rest, it was in service to the story of the fact that dude was hurt or whatever, right?
Yeah, at one point I think Corbin rolled out to the outside and started getting counted out. But you could tell that he was going out to, catch a breather. But he was also doing his heel stuff where he's avoiding contact with his opponent, and so it worked.
Yeah, I thought this match was fantastic. It was really good. I don't know. I think it's interesting too that they did the goofy finish there with the cheating on Elias's end, because that can either be seen as like a finish where go, oh well, it takes two to tango. He tried to cheat against me, so I just gave him a taste of his own medicine. Or that could be, oh well, this feud can continue now, or whatever. There's a million different things you can do, and that's what I mean about a lot of these finishes are open ended or final, one or the other, which obviously I guess they all have to be one way or the other. But anyway, John, what else happened here?
That was the end of the match. We moved on to the next one.
All right, what was the next match?
It was the Raw Women's Championship. It was Shayna Baszler versus Becky Lynch, who has now been the champion for over a year, which is impressive because you don't usually get long title reigns in WWE like this.
Well, they don't have time to let the women wrestle on TV and, stuff. So, I mean, they only have 3 hours on a Monday and 2 hours on a Friday. There's no time for this stuff, she they'll have like
2 hours on Wednesday, an hour on Thursday.
It's crazy. Well, anyway, she's been the women's champion for a year. Long title reigns like that don't happen very often in WWE, so that's pretty cool. They're probably doing that for a reason, I would assume, so that she can have that to gloat about when she turns heel or whatever. But I mean, why? Tell me a little bit about how this match ended up happening, or why is this happening?
So Shayna Baszler decided that she was done with NXT after she lost the title to Rhea Ripley. And so she came up and started making a mark for herself. And by mark, I mean literally biting chunks out of Becky Lynch's neck. Which, if you watch that segment, so she bites her on like the left side of the neck. And then when Becky comes out later that night to cut a promo, her like the right side of her neck is taped up. So like the opposite side that was bit. And I'm like, you guys literally just filmed this segment like an hour ago. How could you not remember what side was bit? But that's neither here nor there. That's just years of me watching movies to like catch continuity issues. So Shayna then went on to win the Women's Elimination Chamber match, which Byron Saxton gave us a fact that I personally did not catch on, which I am shocked that I didn't. But Shayna Baszler defeated all 5 women in that chamber match. And so she is the only woman in history, but really the only person in history to eliminate all of her opponents in a single chamber match, which is impressive, I think, because she's also a cage fighter. So that's kind of her thing that she kept gloating about. And so she was ready to kind of defend the honor of her fellow 4-horsewoman of the UFC, Ronda Rousey, who lost the title last year to Becky. She was here to get some revenge and also make her name known in the main roster of WWE.
Here's one of the negatives that I see in WWE all the time is they build someone up, and this happens a lot with the women for some reason. They build someone up, they give them all these accolades, and then they job them the fuck out. It doesn't make any sense. Like, why you jobbed out the whole women's division to Shayna Baszler, and we'll get to the result here in a second, but how could she lose?
They did this at the Royal Rumble, too. She was the number 30 entry. Everyone was like, oh, Shayna's going to come in. She's going to run house, eliminate everybody. And then they had her get eliminated by Charlotte. And Charlotte ended up winning. And we're like, Charlotte's literally ran like circles around everyone on the women's roster. So let's have her beat the NXT person who's been running circles down there. And so I'm like, what are we doing? So then they had to reset course real quick. Like, oh, shit, we've messed that up. Let's hurry up and throw Shayna in that elimination chamber. No one will know that she's going to be the winner. Yeah, we all knew she was going to win because we knew that this was the match from the get-go. We just thought it was going to be established at Royal Rumble.
I get the concept of you heat someone up to make them a contender, but you don't set them on fire to make them a contender. You know what I mean? You don't throw them in the incinerator and they come out, Johnny Blaze. That's not what you do. You heat them up. You don't fucking, you don't put them in the broiler, and I don't know. It doesn't make any sense. But let's talk about this match because this match is really good, right?
Yeah. So it starts out before the match even begins. We had a vintage 1999 WCW where Becky Lynch randomly pulls up to the Performance Center in a spray-painted semi-truck. What the hell was that?
to silence, too. She's been doing that. She's showed up to the Performance Center a couple times now while they've been doing these shows, with no crowds. She's done that. In fact, who knows? It might have been the same fucking video. They just showed it again, But I think
they had the semi for one night. They're like, "Oh, let's get you pulling up 4 different ways so we can use it like different times."
Hey, you might be right about that, but and so I mean the idea is they have this paintbrush and they only have a few colors on the paintbrush and the colors are Stone Cold, Hulk Hogan, Undertaker. Those are the colors that you have to paint with in the WWE, right? When you start to get over. And so, Becky Lynch has gotten over and people comparing her to Stone Cold. So, they get out their paintbrush and like, oh, which color should we paint her with? Well, I guess we're painting her with the Stone Cold paint color. So that's what they're doing here, is trying to make her like Stone Cold, which is fine, but why can't you just be you? Why do they have to, maybe there's other colors in the world, or maybe Becky could have her own color and you start painting her with the Becky Lynch color instead of somebody else's color, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I just don't get the semi-truck. It was real weird.
John, where do I come up with these metaphors? Where do they come from?
Your brain.
Yeah, it's weird. Anyway. All right, so tell me about the match.
So to begin, it is a slugfest where Shayna and Becky are just whomping on each other with right hands and left hooks. And eventually, Shayna tries to lock her into a rear naked choke, but Becky is able to scramble out and works her way to the outside, where she reverses like a powerbomb attempt by Shayna into a Hurricane Rana. And then they just get back in the ring and keep reversing each other's moves, like right after each other. And it gets slightly old. And then they move their way to the apron, where Shayna is also trying to do some moves onto the apron, but Becky is able to reverse it and hits a rock bottom onto the apron, which, as Tom Phillips said, this is where the steel meets the wood. And that's why it's the hardest part of the ring. Okay, Tom.
You thought that was pretty funny, didn't you?
I did. It's like where the road meets the asphalt or something like that.
Where the rubber meets the road
where the steel meets the wood.
In the way he said it, he had thought of that a week earlier or something, or maybe earlier that day, and he was really proud of himself for that one.
Like, I can't wait to use this shit. It's gonna be so good.
He needs to come to my class for metaphors, I think, because I don't think that was a very good one. But
they got a good pop out of me.
You liked it. That's awesome.
So Becky, I think there was some spots I missed in between here, but hey, I'm not here to cover the entire match. Becky goes to the top, but Shayna meets her there, kicks her in the face, and then yanks her off the top rope. She picks her back up and goes to hit like a power slam, but on the way down to the mat, she switches it into an armbar, which was really smooth looking and really pretty. And then Shayna puts a disarm her on Becky Lynch, but luckily that's Becky's finisher. She knows how to get out of it better than anyone else. So she tries. They go to the ropes again, and Becky tries to do an armbar on the ropes, but Shayna is able to get out of it and starts choking her so Shayna's on the inside and she's choking Becky, who's on the outside of the ring, and literally has her up so that her feet are dangling like outside of the ring, so there's no grips at all. And the ref starts counting her, saying, "Hey, you're gonna get disqualified if I get to 5." And she's like, "I know." So she waits to 4 and then just drops her. So she doesn't meet the apron; she just drops straight to the floor.
That move is awesome. I love that spot. It looks terrifying, right?
Yeah, it looks like she's really choking her out, which she is. And if I was Becky, I would have just tried to tap out, but it wouldn't have counted because she was on the outside.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. It only does damage. It can't win you the match. But now something I forgot to mention is that during Becky's entrance, we got the fog shooter things that shoot out fog that they use for house shows, and I was really sad.
You thought they were going to shoot pyro off inside the
No, I just, I don't know. I hate those things. They just remind me of crappy house shows. That's what they remind me of, not motherfucking WrestleMania, So.
I was talking to someone earlier this week, and we were like, oh, I can't wait till WWE's doing all the pyro outside of the performance center, 4:00 in the afternoon, and all the neighbors are looking over, and they're like, why is there pyro going off over at the performance center? Because they do that big spectacle of fireworks going off on buildings. We're like, oh, I guess that's what they're going to do this time. But you know they have all those extra fireworks just sitting around that they were using in Tampa.
Fireworks on retainer is what they got. Yeah.
SummerSlam is gonna have so many fireworks that no one's gonna know what to do with.
Well, and she got cut up for this match. Did you notice that she like put on 5 pounds of muscle and lost like 10 pounds of fat somehow, and she didn't even have any fat? She was cut the fuck up. Probably best shape I've ever seen her in for sure. She looked awesome. I was a big fan of that. One thing I'm not a fan of is the announcers constantly using this phrase, she might be out. He might be out. I don't want to think about my wrestlers being unconscious. The people I like and the people that I love or that I don't like, or the people that are in the ring, trying to kill themselves for our entertainment. I don't want to think about them being unconscious in the ring, because I've seen what that looks like in real life many times, unfortunately, and it's not funny, and it's not something to joke around about. So I don't understand why they always say that. She might be out. You're like, no, shut the fuck up. And the other thing that kills me about announcers is that come up with a different way to say something. There's a lot of words in the English language. In fact, the English language is a living language. You can make up words if you want. I used to ask my English teacher, I'd say, is this a word? She goes, it is now. It's a living language. You can make fucking words up if you want. And they can't think of another way to say they got rocked by that kick other to say, she might be out. Pisses me off.
Or it's the hardest part of the ring.
Yeah, they
said that about 5 times tonight. We get it. It was the hardest part of the ring in the match earlier.
I love this match. Tell me about this goofy-ass finish, though. What happened here?
So right before we got to the finish, on the outside, Shayna's been doing this spot where she picks the girls up like she's going to do a power bomb, but instead of power bombing them, she just starts side slamming them into different objects. And so she grabs Becky and like hits her against the the announcer table, and I'm pretty sure the first shot she was too low and her head hit that sticking out part on the bottom, because it sounded much different the first time when she hit it than it did the second time. And so you thought that Becky was out, but she wasn't.
She might be out. You know who is out, and the reason why Shayna Baszler can do that move is because Nia Jax is out, because that was her shit. If you remember, she used to do that to Sasha Banks all the time, and then she disappeared, which was okay with me. And and now Shayna's doing that. So I hope Shayna gets to keep that when Nia Jax inevitably returns, but hopefully that'll be a long time from now. So anyway, sorry, not a fan. But tell me about this yucky, weird finish here. This is the problem with this match.
So Shayna throws Becky back inside the ring, and she goes for the I'm gonna butcher this name, the Karabuki clutch.
Karafuda clutch.
Yeah, I tried to have the voice to text do it, and it just said the Karabuda clutch.
Close enough.
She locks it in and then drops down to the ground to really solidify that she's got it in. And instead of putting her legs around Becky to kind of put her in a bear hug with her legs, she keeps them off. And so Becky kicks back, puts Shayna's shoulders to the mat, and is able to steal the win.
It just didn't match up with everything else that had happened. And I think it's the wrong finish. I think Shayna should have won, or, some kind of bizarre thing could have happened. A fluke win by, I think that's kind of what they were going for, was like a fluke win from Becky, but it just didn't come off right. I don't know what happened.
Yeah, and this isn't the first time we've seen this finish to the match, because I think Kairi Sane beat Shayna this way once before already down in NXT. But I guess WWE doesn't think that people watch both NXT and the main roster, so they can get away with this type of stuff. But yeah, I thought it was a kooky finish. I had no doubt that Shayna was winning this and was gonna run wild, because they made her out to be such a monster. And then this is exactly what you're talking about, where they build and build and build, and then they just grab the fire extinguisher real quick and spray it on them. Before the fire can get completely engulfed in flames. They're like, let's put this out real quick. But don't worry, we're going to put the title on her in 2 months.
Right, yeah. If there even is a WWE in 2 months, So it's just, I feel bad for people because, you've heard so many stories from bitter wrestlers that talk about, oh, well, this was supposed to happen and that promise was made to me and this, that, and the other thing. And one thing about Shayna is that she's not young. I think she's 39, I think, and she's like my age. So, she's like just a couple months younger than me. And so, it's not the end for her, certainly. It's just the beginning. But at the same time, it's like, I mean, who knows how many years she's got left in wrestling? I mean, let's pull the trigger. They never fucking pull the trigger, John.
They did it with Asuka too. Like, they built Asuka up and up and up and up, and then they had her in a championship match, and then she lost her first match at WrestleMania to who else? Charlotte Flair, that's where all dreams go to die. Charlotte Flair. I love Charlotte Flair. I think she's great, but she's like the Triple H of the women's division, where she literally gets over on every single match and loses every once in a blue moon.
She's a terrible babyface, and she's a really good heel. And that's the other thing too. She can't. I don't know. And they switched her so many fucking times. That's another thing that's frustrating about WWE, especially lately, is constantly changing people's alignments. Sometimes on Twitter.
Yeah.
Come on! Like, how many times is poor Carmella, where the hell's she at? Poor Carmella has switched alignments off camera like 4 times. Terrible.
Yeah, at least give her the Big Show treatment where he changes, whether he's face or heel 3 times in one show. Just give her that treatment.
Yeah. Anyway. Well, what was the next match, John?
The next match was the Intercontinental Championship match. It was Daniel Bryan with Drew Gulak taking on Sami Zayn, the current champion, with Shinsuke Nakamura and Cesaro.
You put the IC title in, you take the IC title out, you put it right back in, and you shake it all about. What was this match all about, John?
This match was about the Hokey Pokey, which, if you're not familiar with our show, the Hokey Pokey is when 2 wrestlers, they start the match, and you think they're about to lock up, and then one weasels their way outside, and then you think they get back in, you're like, oh, the action's definitely going to start now. And then they get back out, and they like refuse to touch each other until it's like time to get the action going. And so this match, I believe, I almost started a timer, but I didn't think fast enough for it. I'm pretty sure there was at least like 5 to 6 minutes of Hokey Pokey before any actual physical contact happened.
Yeah, and Hokey Pokey can be any kind of stalling, but in this was a classic Hokey Pokey where the heel, in this case is Sami Zayn, just keeps sliding out of the ring and just running away from Daniel Bryan.
Yeah, and so each time he would run away, Daniel Bryan would get out and he'd chase after him, but Sami's goons would block him from being able to get a hold of Sami. Instead of just running past them, they're a big wall. You can't go past them. But eventually, what were you going to say?
Yeah, continue, please.
So eventually Gulak got tired of this. He saved us all. And so he got on the apron and just ran across it and did a little senton onto both Cesaro and Shinsuke, grabbed them each, chucked them over the barriers, and took them out of the equation so that Daniel Bryan and Sami Zayn could finally have a match. But Sami was still hesitant to get in the ring. And so DB let the ref know, like, hey, start counting him. Drew, you don't touch him. Like, if he wants to walk out, that's what he can do. And so Sami's like, sweet, I'm walking out the champion like I said I was going to do. And he starts to leave, and Daniel runs up the ramp and just tackles him, like, face first into the ramp and just starts beating on him. And then he grabs him by the hair and chucks him back in the ring and starts beating on him again.
This match is when I started to see these tweets that just made my head explode. They would say things like, I can't believe he's taking that bump in front of no one. And I just don't understand. It's fucking WrestleMania. I saw a wrestler tweet, why are these guys going so hard? And I'm thinking to myself, motherfucker, if you were on WrestleMania, no matter what the situation, you'd be going hard as fuck because you're a good wrestler, and that's what good wrestlers do to entertain the crowd. So that pissed me the fuck off. But you were shocked, John, by the amount of violence that Daniel Bryan was kind of putting down on Sami Zayn, right?
Yeah, I'm not used to this like physicality that Daniel Bryan was showing tonight. Like he was laying into Sami Zayn with these like punches that looked so painful. And then even he started just kicking him so hard. And at one point, this is the spot that everyone was like, can't believe you would do that. So he like threw Sami to the outside and then ran out to do I know it has a fancy Japanese name, but he runs out to dive onto him. And he kind of like overshoots and he runs like shoulder neck first into the barrier. And it looked brutal, but it also looked great at the same time.
Yes.
Like, this is Daniel Bryan. This is the Daniel Bryan that everyone knows and loves. And everyone was so mad that he would do a spot like that. And so my thing is, so sure, there's no crowd at the venue, but there's clearly an audience watching at home right now. So they might be putting their bodies on the line for nobody there, but we're all sitting on our ass and watching it at home right now. So yeah, there was a crowd.
Yes.
It physically wasn't there. And they're also, sorry guys, they're getting paid so much money that he's like, sure, if I got to do this, I got to do it in front of nobody. I'm still getting my check.
That's right.
Okay. So well, people are doing these at house shows for 50 to 100 people. So what's the difference between doing it in front of 50 to 100 people doing these crazy spots for a fraction of what Daniel Bryan's getting paid and him doing it for nobody in the crowd and getting this ginormous check that we all wish we were getting? So it's like you're just whining about it. Sorry, everybody, but that's what you're doing.
I mean, a couple more points too. Daniel Bryan knows what he's doing. I'm not going to sit here as some kind of I mean, what the fuck do we know about wrestling, actually doing the art of wrestling? We know about the structure and the things that we like to comment on, but we're not right about everything. And at the same time, I just don't understand the people that, are saying things like no one's watching this when they're watching it. So you're fucking burying yourself, idiot.
Yeah, you're literally watching it because you're commenting on it.
That's so fucking stupid. But another thing, too, about this Daniel Bryan, this is basically a, slightly watered down version of Bryan Danielson. This is American Dragon. This is the ROH champion, that beat the shit out of Nigel McGuinness and vice versa for a year, and this is the guy who does extremely violent things. And I love that Bryan Danielson, you didn't really know that he was kind of known as a hyper violent guy at Ring of Honor. I mean, that's what he was known for. I mean, he beat the fuck out of everybody. In fact, one of the finishes that he was known for was putting people in a submission and then just elbowing the fuck out of them until they either went unconscious or just gave up. So
yeah, I think I just missed him in Ring of Honor because I eventually started watching it because it came on Star 64 in our area, but he was on the way out, and that was when El Generico and Kevin Steen were huge, and what is Seth Rollins' name?
Tyler Black.
Yeah, it was when it was their time to shine. So I remember watching all of them in Ring of Honor, but I had just missed Bryan Danielson. So I'm fine if that's the style of matches he wants to start wrestling again. Because
it's also less dangerous. So as far as the punches and the kicks and everything, that's not going to hurt him. So and Sami Zayn's heel selling in this match was masterful. It was awesome. This was really fun. And it was a simple match too. What else happened in this one, John?
So they got back in the ring. DB continued to beat the crap out of him. And at one point, he puts him in the corner, and he starts yelling at him and saying, Drew's not a nobody, you're a nobody. And he's just kicking the shit out of him. But then Sami is able to catch him with a surprise elbow and gets a few licks in But eventually, Daniel Bryan hawks up from the chops that Sammy's throwing at him, and he's able to get the yes kicks in, and then he grabs Sammy's arms and starts stomping on Sami Zayn's face, this spot looks so brutal.
Awesome.
But it's great. And then Cesaro and Shinsuke make their surprise comeback. They find their way around that short barrier, and they take out Drew on the outside. So DB decides he's going to dive out onto them. And so he dives out to them, rolls back in the ring, or gets to the top rope to come down, I'm assuming for like a headbutt on Sami Zayn. But Sami Zayn is back on his feet. He hits a big boot, which Michael Cole kept saying it was a hell of a kick. It was not. It was just a boot. And he was able to get a quick roll up and steal a victory. And he retains the IC title. Keeps his promise.
I think the idea was that it was supposed to be the Helluva kick or whatever, but I think he didn't get a few steps in. He was, he was a little too close and couldn't get a few steps in. Because, I mean, it's basically the same thing as a big boot. It's just running and in the corner, But either way, fuck you, Michael Cole. So, anyway, I thought this was a lot of fun. It wasn't my favorite match on the night, and that's odd because usually I'm everything Daniel Bryan I'm all about. And his WWE matches lately have been just top notch. He's one of the best there is, and he's going to come back even better because all these guys are going to get to finally rest a little bit. So, this coronavirus thing is terrible. However, it is allowing wrestlers the opportunity, because a lot of these guys just keep going. Oh, my side hurts. Okay, well, what's wrong with it? I don't know. Oh, it stopped hurting. Okay, must be better. That's pretty much how medical shit goes in wrestling for a lot of these guys. So, they can finally rest and kind of get better, and I can't wait to see him when he comes back. So, anyway, what was the next match, John? Or was there a segment or something? We didn't talk about Gronk at all, which I'm okay with, and we don't have to talk about Gronk, so.
Yeah, Rob Gronkowski was the special guest, host for WrestleMania. Luckily, he was in far and few spots. He was at the very beginning. I think him and Mojo Riley were standing out up on the balcony doing yes chants at the beginning of that, and that's all they were involved in. But they'll return at some point.
Okay, so you do have that segment in the notes. Okay.
Yeah. So our next match was a triple threat singles ladder match for the SmackDown Tag Team Championships. Are you caught up with me? So supposedly, last night on a segment during Friday Night SmackDown, The Miz got injured mysteriously, which I watched that segment, and there was nowhere in that segment where he could have gotten injured. But
do you know what happened? Do you know what actually happened?
I've heard rumors that he showed up to work sick, and everyone was very mad at him and frustrated that he would come in not feeling well. And so they had to scramble and switch this to a singles triple threat match instead of doing the tag team because they still wanted to defend the titles, but they didn't want to throw a random person with John Morrison.
Yeah, and gosh, this is such a mess, but man, they did such a great job with it as far as making it something that made somewhat sense, Another thing I find really interesting about this match is that years ago, there was this unification match. I think it was at TLC in 2013, maybe 2014 or something. And it was Randy Orton versus John Cena. It was supposed to be for the final time, and it was to unify the heavyweight championship and the WWE championship. Yeah. And they had this cool little thing. And if you remember this segment, this was the segment where Daniel Bryan started to get over, where they were in Seattle or somewhere near there, and the crowd just wouldn't stop chanting Daniel Bryan to the point where CM Punk just grabbed the mic, or maybe he was laughing at Triple H. Anyway, point is, really funny segment if you've never seen that, because the crowd will not shut the fuck up, and they're just chanting for Daniel Bryan. But the point is that they have this neat little tool that goes on the end of a line that you put both belts on. And I remember thinking to myself at the time, that's the last time they'll ever use that. And they have found a million reasons to hang two belts up, and that thing shows up all the fucking time.
Even if they're doing a singles title, I think they still use it now. That's their thing.
It's
And
pretty cool.
but you're not allowed to grab the title like from that. You're not allowed to disconnect it. You have to pull like the whole thing down from the toboggan. And I'm like, it would just be so much easier just to pull the belt, but you can't. You got to pull it down from the toboggan now.
I don't know, man. I've seen lots of ladder matches, and apparently climbing a ladder and then pulling that belt down, those are almost impossible things to do. So,
so hard.
You definitely can't do it fast. So,
And the ladder has to be exactly underneath, because if it's just off by a few inches, it is impossible to get.
you got to climb back down and scoot it over and then get kicked in the face. That's what happens.
Yep.
So anyway, well, so this is a ladder match with three guys that can fucking go. So we're expecting a lot out of this match. I thought this should have gone first. And it started out kind of weak, honestly, right?
It was. So our competitors were Kofi Kingston representing the New Day, Jimmy Uso representing the Usos, and then John Morrison, who was representing the tag team champions. But yeah, the start, I thought that it was going to be a really hot start, but all they did was like everyone reversed out of a monkey flip, and I was like, cool. And then they all went out and got a ladder and came back in, and then they made a joke that Kofi and Jimmy got the bigger ladders, and John Morrison, he had the littler ladder.
Yeah, it's penis. They're joking about penises.
Yeah. And then after that, so there's so much like going on, because once they started getting going, like they were going. So I didn't take a ton of notes for the first like 5 to 10 minutes, but then I started picking up on some cool spots. Once where eventually they had a big ladder set up, and Kofi went to the outside and swung in through the opening of the ladder to try and drop kick John and Jimmy, but they both caught him and then went to the other side of the ring and just tossed him over the top rope to the outside, which I've never seen really many people use the inside of the ladder to ladder matches. So I thought it was a really creative spot, and thankfully that wasn't the last one that they did. So there was a spot where Jimmy tried to push the ladder onto Morrison's face, but the ladder went, like, Morrison was standing in the middle of it, so it went like over his head and bounced off the rope, and then he grabbed it and shoved it into Jimmy's face and hit him with like the edge of it. And I thought that was a really creative spot that, we haven't seen too many times. And then there was a spot where Morrison had wedged a ladder in between the top and the middle rope, and so Jimmy worked his way up there and was going to superplex Morrison off the top of that. But Morrison was able to work his way out of it and got Jimmy to lay on top of the ladder. And Morrison went to the top of the ring post, because now there he has those like flat ring posts, and he hits a Starship Pain off the top of that ring post onto the ladder that Jimmy's on, and it was like super sweet. I really enjoyed that spot.
That's the kind of shit I want to see when I'm watching John Morrison wrestle. I want to see that, and we haven't seen any of that in WWE, or from my knowledge of the stuff I've seen from him. It's been very low effort. So I've been really happy to see him actually, try hard and really, really, bust it out. But he was doing it in front of nobody, One of the things that I really loved in this match is that normally when guys set up a ladder contraption, they just do it while the other guys are selling, and there's no kind of rhyme or reason to it other than, hey, I'm trying to set up this weird thing for a spot. So in this case, we had John Morrison on the outside of the ring and Jey Uso on the inside, and Jim Morrison was taking a ladder and had it through the ropes and was trying to hit Jey Uso with it, and Jey Uso was kind of pushing it away. Well, Jey Uso lost the battle and slid out of the way, and the ladder landed right in and made a little bridge. And I was like, holy shit, ring psychology setting up a ladder contraption. I love that. That is awesome.
Yeah. There was a lot of different spots that they set up that it didn't look like they were transitioning into different spots. It looks like it was just match continuing. Like there was this, I don't remember exactly, but I know Kofi kept like hitting Jimmy with a ladder and saying like, come on, man, I know you're better than this. And he'd keep whacking him with it. Like, I know you can do more than this. It kept hitting him. And Jimmy's like, dude, stop it. Let me go.
They also did a great job of the thing that I always talk about with triple threats is that, if for most of this match, all three guys were wrestling at the same time. There was just one part towards the end where Kofi just disappeared for like 6 minutes. And I was like, oh, but they did a great job otherwise. But go ahead, John.
So there was a spot where Morrison's trying to go up the ladder, and Kofi dives from the ropes, and Morrison's like halfway up the ladder, and he catches Kofi, and then they do like a Hurricane Rana from the middle of this ladder from the ropes, and I'm like, how did the ladder not topple over when Kofi got there? Like, these guys are so skilled with this. And then there was a spot where Jimmy was running the barrier, and Kofi just out of nowhere grabs the ladder and just throws it at him. You see him like fall off the barricade because he just got whacked with this ladder. And there's another spot where Kofi was on the ring post on one side of the ring, Morrison was on the other, and Morrison literally uses the top rope as a tightrope, and he walks all the way across from one side and gets Kofi with a Spanish fly off the top rope. And then out of nowhere, Jimmy comes out of nowhere with a body splash on the Morrison. And it was very good, like, sequence of moves.
One after another. Boom, 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 boom. You know, it was really good.
And then there was a part where Jimmy was on top of a ladder in the corner, and Morrison just goes over and pushes the ladder, and you don't see Jimmy fall, but you just hear a big old, like, you're like, oh.
That was this is one of those spots where they obviously edited that, because you don't see Jimmy splat, and then they cut over and he's just laying there, and it's like, wait a second. So I think they put a crash pad under that for that move or something along those lines, because it just seemed there was definitely an edit there.
Yeah, it was a brutal spot if they didn't, but whatever, it sounded good. So towards the finish, all three of them have a different ladder. Or no, there was two ladders. John Morrison and Kofi were on one. Jimmy brings another one in. Morrison's on one side. The two guys are on the other. They work their way to the top. All three of them get their hands on the tag team titles. Jimmy undoes the clip, and he pulls the titles off, but all three of them are holding them. And so you kind of, like, typically when this happens in a ladder match, like, the bell rings, and you're like, okay, well, who won? Because all three of them are holding the titles, and so, you know, we can't have a three-way tag team champions right now. And so they all start, like, punching each other, and Morrison on the one side, you kind of see him start holding the belts, and then Kofi and Jimmy both headbutt him, and so John Morrison falls off the top of the ladder, and everyone kind of forgot that there was already a ladder sticking in between the rungs and the ropes that him and Kofi were on, and so he lands square onto that ladder, but he's got both belts in his hand, and so they finally ring the bell, and Miz and, quote, Morrison retain their SmackDown Tag Team Championships.
Really cool finish. My only thing is that whoever was on the ring bell, I thought that they had that announcer from PTW on the fucking ring bell. I was screaming at the screen like, ring the fucking bell, ring the fucking bell. And they just missed that cue just by like 10 seconds. You know, so there's like 10 seconds of them standing there going, what the fuck's going on? The bell should have been ringing, you know, because Kofi and Jey Uso, they were like Jimmy, whatever. And Uso, they were, you know, ready to react to the win, or the loss, or whatever. So they were trying to do that. They were like, do I react yet? Do I react yet? No. And the bell's not ringing, and then all of a sudden it rings. So, and this was kind of at the part of the night too where I started to think to myself, all these finishes and matches have been pretty straightforward. There hasn't been much shenanigans or anything. Are we going to get surprises? Are we going to get anything weird or, you know, different? And we did. We did end up getting those kinds of things, but later on. So what happened after that match, John? And well, I'm sorry. What did you think of that match? And then we can move on. I'm sorry.
This, like, I think I said it earlier on the show, like, this was one of my favorite matches of the night. I am a sucker for ladder matches. And when you put, like, three guys who I know are going to kill it in a ladder match, like, Kofi's been in a ton, Jimmy's been in a ton, John Morrison's been in a ton. Like, I knew from the get-go this was probably going to be pretty good. I did not think it was going to be as good as this was, though I feel like I saw a lot of, like, negative reaction to it on Twitter and, like, just people texting me. And I'm like, I thought it was freaking phenomenal. Like, I loved it. I thought it was a lot of really cool, innovative spots that you don't get in a lot of ladder matches, because nowadays they're kind of repeating spots because you can't really reinvent the wheel, but somehow these guys were able to, like, add a few more pegs or something onto the wheel. So I thought it was really creative. What about you?
Well, I liked it. It wasn't my favorite match, and here's why I kind of was a little down on it. Was because this is fucking WrestleMania. This is WrestleMania. That was a great match at TLC or at Extreme Rules or something like that. I don't know that that was a WrestleMania level match where, I just feel like that there could have been a couple more kind of death defying, out of control spots. And honestly, I want to see more from Jim Morrison. I know he's a heel, but I want to see more from him. I want that cocky dude that is like a extremely skilled heel that is a great wrestler, and that's why he's a cocky asshole. That's the character I want to see out of him, and I want to see that in the ring. But but we all have our own opinions. We all don't like everything. So, but it was a good match, and the finish was outstanding, and the finish saved the match for me.
Good, good. Our next match was our second Ring of Honor style match of the evening. It was Kevin Owens taking on the Monday Night Messiah, Seth Rollins.
That's right. And these guys have they've been feuding for a while now, but they weren't originally. I don't know. It doesn't matter. Who cares? I don't know.
It was like in a tag team form because it was
right.
Kevin Owens and Samoa Joe taking on Seth and his posse, but now everyone's posses are gone, and it's kind of just down to these two. I don't know how the posses all disappeared, but I know how Joe's did. He got a violation, but the other three, I don't know what happened to them, which is sad because Buddy Murphy is so freaking good, and he's nowhere to be seen in this show.
Well, I get there's a lot of people who weren't there for various reasons. And, but yeah, Buddy Murphy, I was really hoping to see a great singles match with him on WrestleMania. But, it is what it is. And, we're not going to get everybody, of course. But this was a really fun match. I thought this was a lot of fun. And it takes someone with the amount of skill and the amount of just incredible charisma of like Kevin Owens to make me give a fuck about Seth Rollins. I don't care about Seth Rollins. If I never saw him wrestle again, I wouldn't even think in 10 years like, oh yeah, remember that guy? I wouldn't ever think of him again. I just don't. He's so overexposed to me. His character's been changed so many times. He's got the same problem that Charlotte does in my eyes, and I just don't. I don't. When I get him on, when he shows up on the screen, I have the Randy Orton reaction where I'm like, I don't want to see this. I want to change the channel.
Well, you just named off two people that I love. Funny enough, so my buddy who's just kind of getting into wrestling, he texted me yesterday asking about like, hey, give me the rundown on this guy, Batista. So I gave him like this really long message about Batista's career. And then tonight before this match started, he's like, hey, give me the rundown of Seth Rollins. And I was like, it was like half of what Batista's was. And I'm like, I really like Seth Rollins, but they've been doing so much that I can't keep up with them. I literally was like, this whole Monday Night Messiah thing, I have no idea what any of it is because it's so weird and out of left field.
Yeah, it's Seth Rollins, so who fucking cares? That's my opinion. But, I just don't. He's a great wrestler. He's not a top guy. He's got the same problem that Roman Reigns has. They're not top guys. So you put him in the top position, and it just grates on me, and that's just how I feel. But this match was awesome. Tell me all about this, John.
So right off the gate, Seth Rollins doesn't want anything to do with Kevin Owens, and he keeps trying to avoid any contact, but not in the same way that we had earlier with Sami Zayn and Daniel Bryan. It was a little bit of a variation where Seth would interact, but he would also, cop out and get out of the ring. But eventually Kevin Owens is done with that. So he gets out of the ring and just goes after Seth Rollins and starts throwing him into every barricade that he can find in the arena. So they eventually get back in the ring after Kevin Owens has had he's had Seth Rollins against every barrier. They get back and they start fighting on the apron, and Seth Rollins hits a backdrop on Kevin Owens, and we get reminded that that's the hardest place of the ring, but not that where the steel meets the wood. And so he picks KO back up and hits this honestly might have been the move of the night for me. I don't know, probably not you, but he hits this beautiful Falcon Arrow on the apron.
Yeah,
And
man.
I'm like, holy crap. It's
Well,
the big dude, and he picks up KO like he's nothing. I'm like,
well, part of that's KO helping him out, obviously, but that's another reason Kevin Owens, tremendous wrestler, whether he's on offense or he's taking a move. And right before that happened, Kevin Owens had tried to kind of do the apron power bomb to Seth Rollins, but Seth Rollins reversed it into his own apron move. Good shit.
yeah, it was great. After that Falcon Arrow, I was like, holy shit, this match is gonna be good. So Rollins carries KO from one side of the ring to the other for a buckle bomb, which I'm gonna give Seth Rollins some props here because he's not necessarily the most like huge, like physical, intimidating guy. Like he's not a Brock Lesnar, but it's much like Cesaro where he has these like feats of strength that you don't expect him to have. Where like KO's weighing like 270 and he's literally carrying him from one side of the ring to the other just to throw him with like force at a turnbuckle. And I think it's impressive. I doubt you do, but
Well, I highly doubt that Kevin Owens weighs 270 pounds.
they said
He's like
66.
he's like 5'9". So
And he's got a big old pot belly.
yeah, I don't think he weighs that much, but but yes, I mean, that's the cool trick of wrestling is these feats of strength. Sometimes they are strength, sometimes it's a little trick that they're doing, but either way, it's fucking cool. So, I just can't wait to get to this ring bell thing. That's what I cannot wait to talk about.
Well, we are very close. So after the buckle bomb, KO returns the favor and hits a pop-up sit-out power bomb for a 2 count, and action spills outside of the ring. And as KO is chasing Seth towards the ring announcer, Seth grabs the bell from the timekeeper and just KO eats a bell shot to the face. And Seth causes a disqualification finish, and the ref calls for the bell that's laying, on the opposite side of where the timekeeper's at. And he's like, ring the bell, ring the bell. And he's like, I don't have the bell. But he eventually gets it, and he rings it. And Kevin Owens wins by disqualification.
Now, we're not done with this match, but this is the funniest thing ever. So when Seth Rollins hits him with the bell, there's this blatantly dubbed in ding. They dubbed in a ding, and several times that bell gets used again later in the match, and every time somebody gets hit with it, they put that little ding in there, and I was laughing my head off. I thought that was so fucking funny.
It's like when you would play like the old N64 games, and you'd grab the bell and you'd hit them, and like 2 seconds later, you're ding ding. Well,
that shit's so funny. We're going to talk a little about Lucha Underground later, but one of the things that Lucha Underground used to do is that, they tape stuff and then they would, edit it and everything. And they did little things like that, but they would also put a whip crack sound when dudes kick somebody. So not only do you hear them slap the leg, but they also time up like a whip crack sound. So it's like, holy shit, kicks and punches and chops and shit are just like, oh my God, so this is a little bit like that. I really enjoyed it, but this was not over, right?
You would think it was because Kevin Owens got the victory, but he gets on the mic and he says, hey, Seth, you're a bitch. I thought that at WrestleMania, you were a god, but you just caused yourself to get disqualified. And that doesn't seem like a god to me. That seems like a bitch. And so he says, I want this match to be restarted as a no disqualification, no rules match. And Seth agrees. He gets back in the ring and he says, all right, you don't have to keep your mouth shut, so you're going to eat your words right here. And so he rolls back in the ring, and the ref rings the bell, and so we get another match. This time, no DQ.
This was a big brawl, with some wrestling moves and stuff, but a lot of it was brawling around to try to get to this big WrestleMania-worthy spot. So let's get to that. Well, what happened here, John?
So Seth runs back in the ring. He hits a running knee, gets KO on the outside, starts beating the crap out of him. He grabs the ring steps and runs full force at KO and hits him in the face. Grabs a chair, starts beating him down with it. And while he's getting beat down, he literally keeps yelling at Seth. He's like, "You're still a bitch. You're always gonna be a bitch."
The word bitch got said a lot tonight, by the
Yeah.
way. So.
And he's like, "You're still a bitch. You're always gonna be one." And then KO grabs the ring bell and returns the favor, and he hits Seth Rollins a few times with it. And then he sets him up on the announce table, and then he disappears. And you're like, all right, I guess KO. He said it's no count out, no disqualification. I guess he's just going home. So no, you see him emerge at the top of the WrestleMania sign, which that is, I wanted to point out. So you said like they didn't do too much like for the arena or the performance center. I don't believe that the WrestleMania sign has been behind the announce table during the tapings that they've been doing.
That's
So
true,
this
yeah.
was like this was their stage pretty much. It was just the regular WrestleMania sign. So Kevin Owens surprises everyone, and he's standing on top of the sign and just dives off of it and hits a massive elbow drop on the Seth Rollins from the top of the sign through the ring announce table. And Seth starts making this sound that the only way I could describe it was like he sounded like he was trying to puke, but he was all out of like stuff in his stomach, and so he's just like and he just kept going.
Kevin Owens, like as soon as it happened, Kevin Owens slides off of him and goes, "Fuck," like that. Because it looked like it hurt really bad for both of them, just the way that they landed. And man, that noise was funny. This whole like ending of this match was just really cool, and that's what that ladder match needed, was something like that. Or maybe two things like that, or something. It doesn't have to be that exact thing. I just felt like that, if that ladder match had a couple, or maybe something a little that is WrestleMania level, WrestleMania worthy. And we had to wait 2 hours into the show to get something that I felt like was like, okay, we're only going to see something like this at WrestleMania. But anyway, so how'd this all wrap up here, John?
So KO grabs Seth Rollins, throws him back in the ring, and you thought that he was going to go to the top rope and hit his bullfrog splash, but instead he gets Seth Rollins up, hits him with a stunner, and then picks up the victory for the second time tonight against Seth Rollins.
There you go. What'd you think, John?
I thought it was a really good match. I really enjoyed it. I mean, both of these guys can go, so I expected nothing less, but I think that this definitely kind of it did more than I thought it was going to do.
Yeah, and the fact that they did the, no DQ stipulation just so they could do that spot, that actually worked. It worked really well, and it made sense storyline-wise, and I liked it. So that was pretty cool. What happened next? Was there a match next, or was there a segment?
Both. So they go to the top where the little balcony is at, and Rob Gronkowski and Mojo Rawley are joined by the 24/7 champion, R-Truth. And he's letting them know how hard it is to be the 24/7 I-40 South North champion, and that's really difficult in these times. And so Rob Gronkowski goes into business for himself, and he clotheslines R-Truth from behind and tries to pin him because somehow there's a ref just casually waiting up top with him. Because I totally thought that he was going to like pull his jacket off and he's going to have a ref shirt for Mojo, or Mojo was going to have one for him. But no, there was just another ref standing up there. So he goes to pin R-Truth, but Mojo, not being a very good friend, grabs Gronk, throws him off, pins R-Truth, steals the victory, and he is the new 24/7 champion in the WWE.
So I made a tweet at this point, and honestly, I wasn't paying that close attention. I thought Rob Gronkowski had won the 24/7 title, but either way, my tweet was funny. So, because I said that do you remember? I don't remember which WrestleMania it was, but it was in Miami, and the security guard, like Rob Gronkowski, was in the front row. It was during the Andre Battle Royal Memorial thingy. And he jumps the barricade, and this lady security guard comes running over and is like, no. And she's like taking him down, basically, because she didn't get smartened up to the spot. And I was thinking, man, he should win that 24/7 title, and then she should win it from him. So I tweeted that and put a little picture of her, and Mojo liked it. And it was a very popular tweet. So It was a lot of fun on Twitter tonight. It was not all smarky marks. A lot of fun stuff going on tonight. So that was a lot of fun. But yeah, so that happened, and then we had our straight to the finish match of the week, right, John?
Well, no, we had another segment, a really random segment that I didn't know why it was even on the show. Charlie Caruso is standing there talking, looking real fine as she always is, and she gets spooked because Paul Heyman sneaks up behind her and says, "Boo, I gotta tell you about my guy Brock Lesnar and how Drew McIntyre's not gonna beat him tomorrow." And then we get, and I'm like, "Why is this here? Just save it for tomorrow."
Yeah.
And that.
Well, it's because Brock doesn't say I'm gonna win. Paul says it for him. That's why.
But he doesn't just say, "I'm going to win." He's like, "I'm going to win, and here's 15 other."
Spoiler alert.
Here's another 1,500 word essay I wrote about why Brock Lesnar is better than everyone else. Okay, we got it the 13th time. And then, yeah, we had our next match, which, as I noted when we were talking during, the show, typically this is the come down moment of the show. It's between, a really hot singles match right before the main event. And traditionally, it used to be the women's match about 3 or 4 years ago, where they wanted to bring the crowd down and, not have them be too exhausted by the time the main event showed up. And so what perfect match would we put there? None other than the Universal title match. Pitting Bill Goldberg, the current champion, who beat the Fiend, Bray Wyatt, in a impressive fashion for an old man that should not have happened, against Braun Strowman, who should not have even been in this match. Mm-hmm. But he got thrown in because Roman said, "I ain't catching that virus. I'm not coming over there."
Yeah, so, this is a nightmare. This is something that was really bad, but who won and how'd they win? And let's just move on so we don't have to talk about this anymore.
Bill Goldberg succumbed to 4 power slams, and that was the match. Well, he hit. This is literally, I'm going to tell you guys the entire match. Goldberg hit 4 spears. Braun Strowman hit 4 power slams. Literally in that order. Strowman pins him, picks up the victory.
Awful.
And that is your Universal title match, which is supposed to be the top title on SmackDown, was in the shittiest match of the night.
Yeah, it was garbage.
It wasn't even a match.
No, it was garbage. So, and there's some people who are like, they think it's funny when the fans are upset. They're like, "Oh, I love this match. I thought it was so funny." But they're also the same people that would be mad if as a wrestler, for example, and they hit their finisher 4 times on someone and they fucking no-sold it and beat you. So, that's a problem. But anyway, yeah, let's move on. I don't want to talk about that anymore.
So we got to your favorite part of the night, which was
single intermission?
No. You're okay. Well, it's WWE. They don't have that.
Right. They don't have an intermission. So at this point, we're moving on to your main event of the evening. What was the main event, John?
It was the Boneyard match. AJ Styles taking on The Undertaker. And this match, none of us knew what we were getting. We had no idea what a Boneyard match was because WWE, I don't think, even knew what a Boneyard match was prior to the coronavirus. They're like, what can we do to mix things up here? And they mixed things up, and they've hit a freaking home run.
If there's anything on this show that you need to watch, this is it, right?
Yeah, hands down.
So, this is where I also made a tweet. And this tweet has been seen by now 30,000 people. I was very popular on Twitter tonight, but thank you, Joey Ryan, for retweeting it. And it was basically letting folks know that clearly they had hired Dario Cueto from Lucha Underground to book this match because this was a Lucha Underground style thing. It was awesome. And what this is this is AJ Styles versus The Undertaker. And we get immediately set up and, with our expectations subverted immediately with this first entrance. Tell me about this first entrance here.
So right out the gate, they pull up to this abandoned farmhouse that has a graveyard, and you hear a hearse with the gongs and Undertaker's like type of music playing, and you see the hearse pull up and the doors open, and a casket, a coffin just comes out of the back, and you're expecting the Undertaker to come out of it, but it opens up and AJ Styles is just in there like, surprise, were you expecting somebody else? And I was like, yeah, I was.
What was so awesome about this too is this immediately started the bitching on Twitter of like, oh man, I guess we're, because they saw the hearse, they figured that was the Undertaker, and they're like, well, I guess we're not getting Biker Taker. Oh, well, this is stupid. I hate everything, is kind of what the temperature of Twitter was. And then what happened, John?
And then Styles is standing there and he's like, oh, I can hear him coming right now. And then they like pan out to the distance, and you see a light coming, just a single light coming down the road. And then you just hear some Metallica playing in the background, which I am surely disappointed that it was not Kid Rock or Limp Bizkit, but I guess Metallica will suffice. You hear Undertaker coming down on his chopper, and he just rolls up to this fight scene on his bike, and he is the American Badass Undertaker. And I was like, holy shit, here we go.
The marks rejoiced, and as people were really happy about this. Now, John, I'm sure you took very detailed notes, but we can't give away everything that happens in this. Let's talk about it. But I mean, we've already almost gone 2 hours, so I know we had no time limit, but Jesus Christ. So I'm just trying to move things on a little bit. But I mean, what was your favorite part of this?
I think my favorite part is when it was a little bit towards the end where they worked their way up to the roof of this barn, and somehow the OC guys who were there, who just randomly popped up, but they now were like popped up on the roof of the barn. And I was like, I didn't see you guys get up there.
How'd they get up there? Yeah.
But you're here. And out of nowhere, Undertaker grabs Luke Gallows and he just throws him off into the dark abyss, and you just hear like a big splat. And I'm like, all right, well, I guess he's dead. And then he grabs Carl Anderson and he tombstones him on top of the barn roof. And then he grabs AJ Styles and he just choke slams him off the top of the roof. And then he climbs down the ladder. And I don't know if you noticed this or not, but you can just see Luke Gallows' like dead body by the ladder. And I'm like, oh, there he is. He's
awesome.
Not moved. He's lifeless.
That
was probably my favorite spot. What was yours?
I think my favorite part was at some point we had a great false finish, because I think this was a buried alive match is what it was. They didn't say that, but it was a great. What's that?
It was a glorified buried alive match.
Right, so AJ Styles, even though he just showed up in the hearse, he had already dug a hole somehow. So he already dug a hole, and he said it was for the Undertaker, and there was a headstone there and everything, which just leads to more confusion, which is just fucking great. This is one of the things I love about this, is there's a lot of just complete nonsense in this, and it's hilarious and really fun. And so, AJ Styles thought he beat Taker. He had him in the grave, and he starts throwing dirt on him. He starts giving the last rites. He gets in this little like backhoe thing to put all the dirt in, and Undertaker appears right behind him, and he's like, fuck.
Like, wait, weren't you just in that hole?
Oh my God. I thought Kane was going to show up, although Undertaker did summon fire a couple times in this match too, which is pretty cool. So, well, what else do you want to talk about in this one? Because this was really fun. If of anything that we saw tonight, I mean, you absolutely have to watch this. This is fucking amazing, and it's one of those things too where like the old school guys will say that this is awesome, and they're the same guys that say like, you can't have magic in wrestling. That's stupid. And then for some reason the Undertaker does it and it's okay. You know what I mean? So.
Yeah. The only other spot that I laughed so hard at is so Taker at one point threw AJ in the grave, and he's like, and then he just turns around and Luke Gallows and Carl Anderson have popped out of nowhere, and they're like, hey Taker, we're here too. And they're like, and we brought some friends, and like the barn behind him starts lighting up and the walls come down and there's just a bunch of druids. And I just kept thinking to myself, I'm like, we're not supposed to be in gatherings of more than 10 people, and there are clearly more druids here than 10, and I'm worried that they might get dinged for that.
Well, I mean, and the camera crew and, various other people. But I mean, who knows when they taped this? They got taped this weeks ago, but it was absolutely awesome. You mentioned earlier in the night there was a part where Seth Rollins had gotten destroyed by Kevin Owens. He was making these crazy noises. There was one other part in the night where someone else was making crazy noises, and that was The Undertaker. This is right before, his big comeback, basically, in this match, as he was wheezing uncontrollably. It sounded just like Seth Rollins, and I was like, oh my God. And they both kind of sound like that lady, that reporter that was stomping wine in that video, and then she falls off this platform and starts making these god-awful noises. That's kind of what they did. Which is also the same noises that Shane McMahon made when Kevin Owens powerbombed him on the corner of a container in the back too. So a lot of wrestling tie-ins with weird noises, breathing noises. Anyway, well, how'd this all shake out, John?
So after Undertaker threw AJ or chokeslammed AJ off the top, he came down, started mocking AJ like, "This ain't done, boy. I'm not done with you yet." But he was, because he just dragged him over to the grave, threw him in it, and went to the little tractor, dumped the dirt onto him. But AJ Styles' hand was still sticking out from underneath the dirt. So he's going to make a comeback at some point.
Well, one of the things too, details there is that when Undertaker moved the dirt, it revealed that the headstone said AJ Styles on it too, which leads to more questions like, I thought AJ dug this hole himself, but that's what Taker said at the beginning. He's like, "I dug a grave for you, Taker," and Taker's like, "You dug your own grave, you son of a bitch."
Keep my wife's name out your mouth.
Yes, what's my wife's name? You knew it before, you don't know it now. There was literally a point where Undertaker just spit on the ground. There's just a scene where he just spit on the ground in disgust. They're fucking awesome. I love this. This is what you need to do with Undertaker. Yeah. This is what you do with him. You could do this till he's fucking 80. He doesn't have to hurt himself. And he barely even took a bump in this match. It's fucking awesome. So I was a big fan of this. Well, John, WrestleMania Night 1 is in the books. I think I already know, but what was your favorite moment of the night? And then we'll kind of wrap this all up here.
Honestly, I think it was finding Luke Gallows dead at the bottom of the ladder. Honestly, that was my favorite part of the match, because I'm like, he threw him off into the darkness, and I'm like, where did he go? And I'm like, oh, there he is. So I think, honestly, that was my favorite part. This Boneyard match was so good. It was better than I ever expected it to be, and it gives me a lot of hope for tomorrow night when they do the Firefly Funhouse match with Bray Wyatt and John Cena, because if this is bonkers, that's going to be just as bonkers, I think. I am excited for it. What about you?
So I think it's hard to say that anything but the Boneyard match was my favorite part of the evening. But I think my favorite, thing of the whole night, I swear to God, was that goddamn bell, man. That made me laugh so hard. I just, because before that moment, I hadn't noticed any audio stuff, which, we both noticed that you could hear people cheering sort of in the background a little bit. It was really low, and it would pop in every once in a while. You hear people clapping or something, but it was it wasn't just the roar of a crowd. It was people clapping in unison or something. It was really weird. So they did mess with the audio a little bit here and there, but that's when I started to pay a little more attention to that, when I noticed that piped in ding that was fucking so funny. And then they did it again, and I couldn't stop laughing. So I thoroughly enjoyed WrestleMania, and, I'm just happy to have new wrestling. Even though, because this is the last we're going to get for a long time, maybe. And we should savor it. And when we have these amazing things like a fucking, a Boneyard match and all this crazy shit, it's awesome. Overall, I would say this was an excellent wrestling show. I'd say it was a fair WrestleMania. It's memorable, yes, but maybe for not the good reasons that you would think a great WrestleMania would be known for, and memorable for. But it had some great parts to it. But at the same time, I don't think it was great. I just think it was a fair WrestleMania, but an excellent wrestling show. What'd you think overall, John?
I would agree with that. I think, with us not having much new content right now, I am really infatuated with this production. And I think WWE kind of took a bad situation that they had and did the best that they could. And honestly, if this coronavirus didn't happen, I highly doubt we would have got that Boneyard match that we got tonight that everyone's raving about. We would have instead got most likely a literal match between AJ and Undertaker, and I don't think a physical match in the ring would have paled in comparison to this Boneyard match that we got. And so, as much as this whole thing sucks, like, we got one of the best matches that we're probably going to get this year in this match, if you would consider it like a match. And so I think you just got to look at the silver lining of the situation. Yeah, it sucks, but hey, they're still giving us some really good stuff that we're going to be able to talk about for a while now.
Outstanding. Well, we'll be back tomorrow night to do the same thing. I guess today night at this point, because it's. I thought we'd get this out before midnight, but that's not going to happen. So.
We're just having a good time.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. So this will be a long episode, and what's it going to hurt? It's not going to hurt anything. So, real quick, if you guys first time you're listening, we have literally over 400 episodes that go back to covering independent wrestling and some WWE in our area, which is the Cincinnati Midwest area. And we've been doing that for years. There's 100 episodes that are interview episodes as well, with people, as Mike Quackenbush, like I was just talking about, with people like Jerry Lynn, and a bunch of the folks that are kind of from our area as well. If you're familiar with them, great. Then, if not, you can become familiar with them through these interviews. So check all that stuff out. You can follow our show at the Road Home FW on all social media, and you can follow me at Drusifer Tweets. Where can folks find you, John?
You can find me at jhat05 on pretty much all social medias.
You have anything else to add?
I don't think so. I'm really looking forward to tomorrow night.
Yeah, it should be fun. I got absolutely nothing to do between now and then except post this episode. So I'm going to probably sleep till like 2 in the afternoon. It's going to be awesome. I can't wait. So Anyway, well, I hope you have a great night, man. And, I hope everybody out there is staying safe and everything. And we'll see you tomorrow night for WrestleMania Night 2.
Sayonara.